The live streaming has started, Chair.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to Communities and Local Services Scrutiny Committee at 10 AM on Thursday 10th of December, the last of the calendar year. We'll start by taking introductions and attendance at meetings, so I'll start the roll call. Councillor Allen.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Barch. Councillor Cousins.
Present, Councillor Renton.
Councillor Mrs Cully.
Yep, I'm here. Thanks.
Councillor Donoghue.
Here.
Councillor Durham.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hazeldine, we've had apologies. Councillor McCollum.
Good morning, Chair.
Councillor Tate.
Good morning, Chair.
Councillor Wallace.
Good morning, Councillor Renton.
And portfolio holders, Councillor Dulston.
Here.
And Councillor Keir is going to be late. Officers, we have Ian Thompson, he's going to be late. Brian Graham.
Yep, here.
Seth Pearson.
He appears to be in another call at the moment, but I've sent him a message to get him to join.
Okay.
Well, I'm here already.
Oh, hi Seth. And finally, Elizabeth Davidson.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'm here.
And I think that covers everyone. Have we got any of the Northgate councillors here yet? I don't think. No, none in attendance yet. So, okay, so we'll move on to declarations of interest. Do we have any to declare? I can't see any hands. Okay, now on to approve the minutes of the meeting of the scrutiny held on the 22nd of October this year. Do I have any comments? Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if you'd received any update regarding a long-term vision for the outdoor market, as was discussed back in August this year.
I was going to ask that question myself, actually. So I don't know if there's anyone who has an update. Hannah or Ian's not here at the moment. Oh.
No, I can try and find out for you and get back to you after the meeting.
Thank you. Any other hands? No. One other thing for me is the walk in the woods. I think we're just going to put it on hold at the moment while we're in tier 3 and see how we get on. But Hannah, thank you very much for a very thorough set of minutes. It must take you quite a long time to write all those up. So thank you. So next we'll move on to.
Can we move? Do we have to move the minutes,
Oh,
Chair?
apologies. You're right.
Happy to move them.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
And a quick show of hands. Yep, moved. Thank you very much. Okay. Number 4, the midterm financial plan. So we have Elizabeth Davidson who will speak to that report. Elizabeth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, following my presentation to all scrutiny members yesterday, I said I'd come to each individual scrutiny meeting in case there was any specific questions with relation to these particular committees. So I haven't really got anything else to say because, as I said, I did the full presentation yesterday. So hopefully everybody's got a copy of the MTFP, and I'm just here to answer any specific questions with regard to your committee, Chair.
Okay, that was nice and easy. So I'll open the floor to questions then, councillors. Okay, so Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'd be interested to know, certainly the Futures Fund appears to be extended until the end of the MTFP, so 2024-25. That's a lot of 20s. I just wonder, beyond that, what plans do we have to continue to support our core offer with these discretionary services, particularly looking at the themes? I think 3 or 4 of the 5 all fall under this committee, and certainly residents would consider them highly valuable, if not essential, to what we provide as a council. So I wonder if you or your team have investigated community municipal investment in particular themes, as opposed to separate streams, or certainly thinking about climate change and what other councils have managed with community CMIs there, whether you'd considered other forms of investment in those areas. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor McCollum. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, you go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, I mean, we have just looked at the 4-year life of the MTFP at the moment. I think the Cabinet's ultimate aim would be to, if we could, potentially mainstream the Futures Fund. But I think with regard to the uncertainty we face at the moment, in particular with regard to the fair funding review, so we still don't know what that is going to achieve for us. But hopefully this time next year we will know that. And at that point, I think we could have a total re-look at the MTFP depending on resources. And I think it was Cabinet's view that it would be nice to mainstream this in the future. As you say, most of them do fall within this committee. But it really depends on resources. With regarding to have we investigated into the community, sorry, did you say bonds? I admit, no, we haven't at this moment in time, but it's certainly something that we can have a look at. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Happy? Is that okay, Councillor McCollum?
That's an excellent answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any other hands at the moment. I just had, I've had Councillor Durham. Would you like to step forward?
Thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, Elizabeth, there was a briefing yesterday for all members. Just obviously focusing on the areas within this committee. If we're able to look at the pressures and the savings, I've just got a couple of questions, and I appreciate I may have to come back on this. If we look at the increased demand, there is a pressure there for street seam wheeled bins for new properties. Now, I'm assuming that is the total cost of collection of the waste from those properties over the 4 years.
I think, Councillor Durham, that's actually for the cost of the bins.
The cost of the bins?
Yes, the collection would be part of the, I mean, Brian's here, would probably help me out here. The collection would be just part of the rounds. I'm not sure in the next 4 years or the next couple of years we were intending and putting a new vehicle on, Brian. I don't think that came through as a pressure in the MTFP.
There is in the starting from next year an amount allocated towards additional resources, because we've sort of hit the trigger point now where the vehicles are saturated in their rounds, and we're struggling with all the new builds to collect them all. In fact, indeed, starting just next week, now there's a coincidence, we're starting to pick some of the new builds up on off West Auckland Road at the top, up on year 68 there. So we're having to put them out on a Monday just in the short term until we have a restructure of all the rounds. The money identified is for the cost of bins. If you think of a household will receive a bin, it will receive a caddy, it will receive a glass box, it will also receive another bin as well. So actually every time there's a new build, there's four different containers goes to that property. So the money that's identified, the pressure is for the cost of bins and, well, containers alone.
Okay, so right, okay, so that answers my question then, because the follow-up was the fact that in terms of bins, they're not capital in nature, they're revenue. So just going back in terms of this increased waste, I can see there above there is a pressure in 2024-25 for waste disposal. Yeah. What's going to happen with the waste for the additional properties that are built before that?
That was already included in last year's MTFP.
We
already put that pressure in for last year, which had taken us to 23-24. Okay. And so it was only the final year that hadn't been accounted for this year.
Okay, understand. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cousins.
Mine's a similar vein to Councillor Durham's. It's regarding street scene, and it could come under the back lanes project really, but it's regarding fly tipping, and just a query and you may not have the answer yet at hand, but it's just how much do we get from waste management? And that's probably in the papers. But how much does it cost for the fly tipping, and especially the commercial rate? And how much do we, if we could reduce the cost of people taking their commercial waste, could it stop a little bit of the fly tipping? Could, like the parking is free for a couple of years, could we do something similar with waste management, just to help negate the fly tipping? Just, I've probably not worded that very well, but I hope you get the gist of it.
Thank you, Councillor Cousins. I don't know how much fly tipping costs off the top of my head. I know that in the MTFP it shows the whole amount for waste collection. Brian may know, but we can certainly come back to you on the exact cost for fly tipping. As far as I'm aware, we haven't explored free commercial trade waste. We obviously have a trade waste service and we make income and we generate income from that. I think that if we made the service free, it might be to our detriment. But Brian, I'm not sure whether you've had any thoughts on that yet.
Yeah, pardon me, sorry. Yeah, like you say, obviously we have a trade waste service, and that brings a large sum of money to the council. In terms of giving that free, so the trade could maybe take their waste direct to the household waste recycling centre. There will be a significant impact in terms of costs for the council. It's not something that we've looked at. It's the same as bulkies as well. Obviously, we do a charge for bulky waste for residents. And if that was to be offered free, I mean, we could do that, let's be frank, but it would cost us quite considerably and the take-up would increase dramatically. So, we all of a sudden we have one vehicle that subjects our bulky waste service. You probably need 3 or 4 because we want their stuff taken away free of charge. So it could do it, but there would be significant impact in terms of finance to the council should we do so.
Yeah, thank you. It's just, I was just seeing if we could offset the fly tipping costs to, even reducing the rate of the charges. But thank you.
Okay, Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't want to rattle off my questions all in one go and obviously give the opportunity for others to come in. Just 2 final questions from me. Obviously, the COVID-related pressures within 2021, 2022, and looking at it from the Dolphin Centre, Eastbourne Complex, Head of Steam, Hippodrome, etc., it's expected there that they will be back up and running to pre-COVID capacity, shall we say, or pre-COVID patronage levels.
Yes, Councillor John. Sorry, from years 2 onwards, we're expecting, we've estimated it will be back to normal patronage. For next year, there is a phased return in there. So, for instance, the pressure on the Dolphin Centre there, we've got £1.1 million. We actually receive more income in, but we're assuming that throughout the year, and I can get you the percentages on what the assumptions are there, that it will get back to normal. But we're assuming April, May and June will probably be still significantly hit. The only thing I can guarantee on that is that I'll be wrong, or it won't be exactly exactly that. But we've tried to build something in, and I think also I've put a note in the MTFP as well that the government have said that they will continue the sales fees and charges income recompense scheme for the first 3 months of this year. So whilst it still shows there's a pressure on that line, there is a line above somewhere which is estimated about £616,000 income we might receive in for that. It's just we received the settlement on the Wednesday evening, and the facts started coming through on the Thursday and Friday, and the paper had to go out on the Monday, so we didn't have time to rejig the whole lot. But we are anticipating some income to come in against that, which will show in the next MTFP that comes through in the February cabinet.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is with regards to in terms of increased demand, there's winter maintenance. There's a review of T's and C's for staff.
Yeah, that would, if I'll be honest, that was missed last year. There was a review last year, and that cost should have been put in the MTFP last year. It was missed, and our error. So we need to build that in.
Agree. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Cousins, do you still is your hand up from previously? Okay, thank you. I just have a quick on Appendix 3, the council's charges. Firstly, I didn't see anything about the council's horse stables, and I asked this last year, and some people said I don't think we even have any, but we do. And I've had a couple of residents ask me if there's going to be an increase in their rent.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to go back to somebody to find out, but I will get back to you. I'll speak to Estates Department will know
okay.
Our horse stables, so I should speak to Guy and the team.
Elizabeth, it's my service. I'll find out off paper and come straight back to you.
Oh, super, thank you.
Thank you. And then it's difficult to quantify the charges without getting an idea of, say, for one of the charges, how many of those happen per year. So obviously you've got a couple that are going up in small amounts, but if you've got something that, you know, there's 5,000 of those every year and you're putting up £10, that could be quite a significant increase. And I know last year you told me that it's difficult to raise a lot of the prices because of competitiveness. But if it's going to make a considerable contribution, having those numbers to say this is an estimate of how many we have every year, and so this would be the percentage change, might be quite helpful.
And what we try to do is put in the final column the financial effect in each section. So in some areas we'll see minimal, in other areas we'll see higher amounts. But I can certainly, if there's any specific areas that you would like to look at, go back to the officers and get more quantitative detail on that. That's not a problem.
There's nothing specific. It was just a thought. Okay. Do we have any other hands up? No. Okay. So we'll move on. So I propose that we can move those three recommendations with that report. Do I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Mrs. Cully, and quick show of hands. Okay, that's moved. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Chair.
I'll
leave the meeting if that's okay.
Yep, of course. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so number 5, we have the Northgate Initiative, and that's going to be presented by Seth Pearson today. Seth.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, the report in front of you outlines the programme that's been established for Northgate and identifies the actions that are being taken and the achievements that have been made to date. The programme is being led by Councillor Dalston. It's a multi-agency programme which started in 2019 and is attempting to address a range of improvements in outcomes for local residents, including economy, education, childhood, health, environment, crime, security and social relationships. Whilst it's recognised that the programme to create sustainable long-term change is going to take some time, we are very keen on identifying quick wins and those actions which are visibly making a difference within the area. Excuse me. Of course, as you may well imagine, COVID-19 effectively curtailed activity in the Northgate Initiative, but I'm delighted to be able to announce that we've picked the work back up again recently and have developed specific actions to achieve the ambitions under each of the 5 delivery work streams. And I'd suggest that members look at the Appendix 1, which outlines those actions in terms of actions to vision. The programme itself, excuse me, was based on a range of evidence that had been gathered previously, and was looking at not only issues related to private sector housing, as members are probably aware, it's the area of Darlington with the highest volume of rented property, and also as a concentration of many poor indicators related to deprivation. One of the issues about that, of course, is that other areas that have predominantly high levels of council housing or social housing, it's easier for the council to have traction in terms of approving some of the issues there. So this was very much looking at the private rented sector, and as the data show, the poor housing conditions, including fuel poverty, homes in poor conditions, and number of long-term empty properties was a particular feature of the area. And of course, those empty properties have a significant impact on the look and the feel of the area and the way residents perceive it. We are, as I say, a series of programs have been initiated, and if members look at paragraphs 19 onwards, it outlines what achievements that we've managed to date, and I'm pleased to say that we have made some impact already in terms of, and particularly important, as I mentioned before, the reduction in the number of empty properties. If you look at paragraph 22, overall, empty properties have reduced from 177 in December 2019 to 139 in September 2020. So as you can see, we're making progress in that area. Clearly, issues related to property, again, are where we are making progress fastest, I think, is easiest, because some of the issues related to improving conditions for children and their education and attainment are clearly longer term issues that take some time to generate traction. I think what I'd also like to bring people's attention to is under paragraphs 61 and 63, we are looking at how the area benefits specifically from the Towns Fund initiative, where there's going to be quite some considerable investment on the area of Northgate Road next to the particular area of the programme, and also a successful bid that's been made to Shaping Places for Healthier Lives, which is looking at how fuel poverty impacts on the well-being of people in that area. So, Chair, I think that's an outline of what the programme's about, the achievements that we're making to date. I would suggest that members take some time to look at the Action to Visions document, which is it's an emerging document, but I think it's really helpful to illustrate that we're making progress in determining across the piece what the actions we're proposing to take to change the area are, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Seth. And it's a really positive report, and you can tell a lot of progress is being made in the Northgate area. And I'll sneak in with the first two questions, because a lot of focus is being put on Northgate. I was just wondering what, because obviously you've got schemes that are being developed there, what rollout or how much replication have we seen of any of these schemes in other wards, and what is the long-term plan for a full rollout across the town with some of these projects?
Chair, I think the answer to that question is it's fairly much being seen as a test bed where we can identify initiatives that may be impactful in other areas. And particularly, one of the things we're just currently looking at is how children progress from Corporation Road School into secondary. And I think there's some good learning there. So I think, yeah, it's a test bed, and we're learning as we go. But I think it is worth bearing in mind that it is an area of relatively unique in Darlington in terms of the housing stock and the nature of that. So some of the stuff that's being developed there around housing and around environment wouldn't necessarily be transferable.
Yeah. Councillor Dulston, I think you want to come in on that point.
No, just to support what Seth's saying, the nature of the Northgate initiative really is to create a blueprint of neighbourhood renewal and regeneration, and how we can solve some of the the deep-rooted social issues that this ward has experienced over recent years. So once we've fine-tuned that, then the idea is to take the concept and implement it into other areas of the town. So it's very much dealing with the issues of Northgate, but creating a meaningful blueprint that is transferable to all of our communities across the borough.
It's really good news. Okay, thank you. So first I have Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the private sector housing, obviously here in North Road, we have very similar problems to Northgate, in that quite a lot of the housing really is substandard. And I just wondered whether this council have ever in the past or will consider in the future the licensing of private landlords. This has been rolled out in several big cities and has proved to be very beneficial to all, both not only to the landlords but to the residents themselves, in that the council then has a clear indication of what it will accept and what it will not accept. And these landlords then have to raise their standards and raise their game. I wondered, as I say, have we thought about it, or please can we think about it for the future? Because I just feel that licensing of such raises the standards in so many areas. Thank you.
Councillor Dulston, you want to come in on that one? Is that you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I think it probably sits with me more than it does Seth. Yeah, I mean, it is something we explored when I first took over this role. It was very prevalent at the time. I know County Durham went live. It is a very, very labour-intensive scheme. So to give you some context, Durham County Council rolled this out, and they've got 120 officers that deal with this very, very issue. So we are looking at the successes of what they're experiencing. It has been rolled out with some successes, but there's also been some challenges. But I know that the private sector housing team are keen to and do continue to work closely with County Durham on the findings of what they're experiencing. If there's any best practice, then absolutely it's something we can take forward. But at the moment, we're just keen to gather some of the learnings.
Oh, okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Donoghue. Oh, Seth, do you want to come in? You've got your hand up now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to what Councillor Dulston said, the private housing team are over and above the issue related to licensing, are very much involved in improving the conditions and empowering residents to be able to challenge landlords in relation to the conditions. So over and above the licensing, there is action going on to improve the conditions. And it's, I think we've got to recognise that particularly in Northgate and no doubt in North Road, the confidence of tenants to actually do that can be quite low. So I think I know the team are very much aware of that and supporting tenants in fighting for the right of decent accommodation.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. It's obviously been mentioned here that there are significant challenges, and we're obviously discussing Northgate here. Now, I'm born and bred in Darlington, and I spent a lot of time in my childhood in North Lodge Park, and had relatives in and around that area, so I understand the types of housing, the housing stock, and I've seen over the years how it has deteriorated, and I think it was welcoming that Councillor Dulston mentioned that whatever we do learn here maybe will be replicated in the town, because there are obviously similar challenges, as Councillor Allen has said, in North Road area. There's similar housing stock in the Bank Top area. Going back to obviously the engagement with residents. Now, I obviously understand there will be a challenge in that some residents won't want to rock the boat, won't want to cause issues with their landlord. Could you just explain what the process has been in terms of engagement with the residents for them to come forward? What's worked and what maybe hasn't worked?
Chair, is that to me?
Yes, Seth, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think there's a variety of things. We are very much looking to the ward councillors to lead on engaging with local residents. However, we are also working with Corporation Road School, which acts as a natural hub within the area. And if members are aware, we've got the bread and butter thing, which is operating from there. So we've got organic means of engaging with them. Under the children and education work stream, the proposal is that we form some kind of a hub where people can engage and explain their issues and be put in touch directly with agencies and parts of the council to start helping them address some of the issues that they have. That's happening organically anyway, according to Anne Pringleton, the head. So using those mechanisms, I'd say, is what we've got so far. The ward councillors, and looking at natural hubs where people go and attend. And looking at Corporation Road School, it's not just the parents, it's a whole gambit of people around the area who are using the bread and butter thing that we'll be looking to engage with. The Shaping Places for Healthier Lives bid also provides some money for community engagement. And right now, Natasha Telfer is considering how that might be delivered in terms of bringing an agency in to start doing some engagement, which there's quite a range of them now that do this sort of work in a very sensitive and hands-on manner with communities. So, Chair, I hope that helps.
You happy with that, Councillor Durham? You're on mute.
Apologies, we're all falling into this trap at the moment. Can I just ask one follow-up question, please, Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, talking about the engagement, and thank you for that. That really explains all of the process and the opportunities to engage with people. With regards to the landlords themselves, how have you been able to bring those to the table? Has that been a soft touch, or have you had to go, right to the extreme and maybe, go through the Section 215 process?
Chair, I think there's been a mix of that, depending on the conditions and what's come to light. I'm aware of several houses that have been in absolutely atrocious conditions, and there's been some severe interventions taken on that. But of course, I think to really get traction in transforming the area has to be done with landlords rather than not automatically jumping to process against them.
Okay. At this point, can I welcome Councillor Ali, who is one of the Northgate councillors. You have the floor, Councillor.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm on my phone, unfortunately. Yep. I just want to thank everybody for the interest in Northgate, and as Seth has pointed out, and Councillor Dulston, and many people who are engaged with different initiatives going on here, it's not a small piece of work, it's a long piece of work, and it's something that we need to do very carefully because we need to keep the sustainability of whatever we develop here going forward as a stronghold as well. with different partnerships and organisations that are getting involved. And we really must stay focused on doing things properly rather than rushing something, and making sure that we get the execution right, and it's not just another obs and aims process where we've done a load of research and then nothing's come out of it. Obviously, we hope to roll out some of the things that come into light and focus here across the town to help develop there as well. However, one of the things we need also is things like how we have Firthmore Community Centre. Me and Eleanor speak with our residents, and obviously that's something they can bring in, the good works going on there, into our area should we secure or find one of the things Councillor Dalston's working on with the team, a community hub here, so that it's not just the whole issue of private housing and the most rented private sector here. We do need to look at everything and focus just as much on all the social building with the community and the people that live here, and support their mental health and well-being and living in the area going on in the future to develop our next generation, for this to be not a dumping ground site but a nice place that people think of when they want to live in Darlington. So thank you. And there is, like Seth said and Councillor Dalston, there's a lot of work going on, and me and Eleanor are constantly keeping on touch with everybody involved. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Very helpful. Okay, Councillor Donoghue.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Seth. Just a quick one on item 22. The amount of empty houses. Has any thought been made into the council buying them and doing them up?
Through you, Chair, yes. I know this is something that Councillor Dalston has been very concerned about as well, and there are plans afoot as far as I know. So yes, I think that the target for this year, and Councillor Dalston will keep you right, is 4 properties during this financial year.
Yes, Steph, and just to give a little bit more commentary, one of the big things that I've tasked officers with is, the stuff that's within our gift. And as a council, we have a fantastic housing department, and one of the successes of that is the wraparound support that we give to our tenants. And if we can do that to residents in Northgate, then we can also improve the community in which people are living in. So this year we've committed to 4 properties that will be took out of, that are currently unoccupied, but actually they'll be transformed into eight separate properties for people to live in. So they'll be flat based. So I'm really pleased that that strategy has now started. And this is something new. We don't necessarily, as a default position as a council, buy terraced houses, for example, into housing stock, but that is something that we're exploring more and more, specifically in Northgate.
Excellent news. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cousins.
Yeah, mine's just a comment, really. It's just to say, well done to the team, to the officers involved, to Seth, but especially to councillors Ali and Lister for for the work that that they're doing above and beyond, really. Just to say thank you to you all.
Thank you, Councillor. Noted. I have, if there are no other questions, I do have one question. Just this report itself is quite very much a bigger picture report. When will this committee have an opportunity to look at everything in finer detail? Obviously, it might not be for a few years till some of this information is available, but if there's a time scale potentially.
Chair, I don't. Councillor Dalston, would you like me to put some commentary on that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I think the actions to vision is where we are beginning to get down to that granular detail. Behind that, and even that is a headline document. It depends how far down you want to go. I think the important things are the change in outcome measures. And if you have a look at the vision and the targets, you know, surely I would have thought this committee would be interested to understand how those targets are being developed and then achieved. We you know, that we can, as officers, we're really adept at having very granular ICA-logs, you know, logs of actions. But I think the more important things is not how many times you're pushing the wheels around, but what change is being generated. I think you want to know, Chair, what actions are impactful, how we're developing those actions, and why the rationale for why we think they're impactful. But ultimately, I'd hope that you'd want to, sorry, you'd want to be, that was, you'd want to be able to see, be assured that those actions are making a measurable difference in the area. Now, I think, as you alluded to, some of these are long-term issues. I think it's the visible changes in terms of the environment, in terms of housing, and I know Brian and his team are creating some immediate visible action, which is hugely important in terms of how people are feeling. And we can, Brian can give you detail on that. However, when you're talking about long-term change, the sorts of things that we want to know is what is happening to kids who are leaving Corporation Road School, what is their progress, and how are they achieving in life. Now, those sorts of things are going to make you know, be really central to the change at longer term, sustainable change in the area. But of course, that means the actions are developed over a longer term, and us being able to measure it is longer term still. So, long-winded answer, but I think we can show. I think we need to get the targets bottomed out. I think we need to come back to you with progress on that and more detail about the actions, but an understanding that some of those targets and some of the achievements will be relatively short term, other are going to be longer term.
Absolutely. Because I think it's important that when this becomes a product that we can roll out to other wards, which may not be for a long time, but parts of it may be rolled out in the near future, that this committee is involved in that process of evaluation, because we obviously have our own, you know, feet on the ground in our own wards, and we'll understand how it will work in our own areas. So, okay, I have two who I think want to come in on that. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. From experience, and what I want to ask is, do we have anything that we are thinking about doing in terms of educating tenants? Because from experience, I do find a lot of tenants do not see the houses that they live in as their homes. They just see them as, it's not mine, so it doesn't matter and I don't care. And I think if we can maybe try and educate people in the fact that, yeah, okay, they might not own it, but this is their home. And if they want to live somewhere nice, then, you know, if they're in somewhere nice, then they have to look after it. And to that end, I wonder how effective our tenancy agreements are, both from the private housing sector as well as our own sector. Thank you.
Chair, would you like me to come in? I'm not hugely engaged with the, you know, to that level of detail, but I absolutely take your point, and I think we have to recognise that part of the community there are quite transient, and they aren't staying there for a long period of time, and that impacts, I'm guessing, in terms of their view of how they ought to behave as tenants. So I think the team would accept that there is a responsibility on landlords, but there is an equal responsibility on tenants in terms of how they behave in that. Of course, these aren't council tenancy agreements, so it's a third-hand relationship that the council has in terms of influencing any of that. But that is very much a part of what the private sector housing team is about, the overall picture of how tenants behave and how landlords behave.
Okay. You coming in there, Councillor Allen?
Sorry, if I may come back on a supplementary with what Seth just said. Regarding the tenancy agreements of private landlords, when I last worked within the law, back in 2006, there was a law brought in which it included certain specific paragraphs which had to be included within all tenancy agreements, be they private or whatever. I know from personal experience that somebody who lives not far away from me, their landlord, their tenancy agreement consists of you will pay me X amount of pounds per week. And I've said, please take that to the housing department and ask them to help you get a proper tenancy agreement. It's now up to them whether they actually are, want to do it or not. But do we have any control if we find this kind of thing in future? Do we have any control? Can we as councillors come to you or come to housing, and can we as a council actually get a proper tenancy agreement in place for these people?
Chair, I'm not as close to it, but my understanding is that we do have a responsibility to ensure to police tenancy agreements. But as I say, one of the things that needs to be borne in mind is that many of the tenants don't have the confidence and are just fearful of just being kicked out in the street. So getting sight of those tenancy agreements, I'm going to say, is often an issue.
Ian Thompson, you wanted to come in on that one?
Yeah, Chair, if I can, I think if members are aware of any situation or cases like that, then please report them through the private sector housing team, and they will pick that up and obviously support residents through any of those particular situations.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Dalston, did you want to come in previously on the previous point?
No, I think it's been lost now, Chair. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, hand down then. Thank you. So if you have no further points, I propose we note the report and thank officers for their hard work, but also applaud Northgate councillors for their hard work and on the ground. It's obviously a huge project with a lot of work to happen in the future, but a lot of good progress has been made so far, so well done. Do I have a seconder? Okay, thank you, and a quick show of hands. Yep, okay. Thank you. Moving on to
Chair, if I might leave at the moment, would that be okay?
So was that you, Seth? Oh yeah,
could I leave at the minute? Got it.
If I come range of
COVID stuff to get on with.
Sure. Thank you, Seth. Okay, so agenda item 6, backlanes and fly tipping. Ian's back now, Brian, so I'm not sure who wants to do this one.
I'll do it if you're happy, Ian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and thanks, Chair. Yeah, the backlanes and fly tipping plan, it's about improving the appearance and cleanliness of problem backlanes, reducing fly tipping and reducing the time it takes to clear away fly tips. We're doing that by refocusing of resources and with also a temporary increase in staff in both terms of street cleansing and also in the civic enforcement team as well. Just a quick big background, in 2016, due to some significant cuts, cleansing service lost 40% of its staff. And whilst in 2018 sort of 19, the Futures Fund identified some money and some resources were put back into street scene, only half of the staff that were lost in 2016 have been replaced, and obviously that's had an impact in the quality of the service. And also in relation to reductions, environmental enforcement at the time had some significant losses as well. So the Battlelands project, it has a number of themes: prevention, communications, information and intelligence, street scene cleansing, enforcement, and also importantly reassurance. And alongside the increased focus on street cleansing, an additional fixed term role has been introduced within the civic enforcement team. That's to focus on key problem battalions. This post will work with ward members and residents in those areas, engaging with them and explaining what the residents' responsibilities are. And for those residents that fail to engage or continue to dispose of their waste inappropriately in battalions, continue to leave bins out all week or put side waste out, then obviously the post will ensure enforcement action is taken. Now this action would start with engagement and issuing of a notice to the resident explaining what their responsibilities are. Should a resident not comply, then a warning letter would be issued. If this is still ignored, then a community protection notice would be issued. Following the issue of the community protection notice, if the resident still placed waste out, then a fixed penalty notice will be issued at that point, and that will be for £100. If a resident failed to pay that, then they will be taken to the magistrate's court. For fly tips, and certainly where evidence exists, a fixed penalty notice will be served with a fine of £400. And in some cases, and again depending on the waste and the evidence present, some will proceed straight to the magistrate's courts. For info, the council currently has 6 overt street cameras that can be deployed in areas that are identified as suitable, and also we have 3 covert cameras, again for fly tip and hotspots. Just finally, a little bit of performance since the implementation of the project. Since the start of the project, the number of fly tips have reduced slightly. As a result of the additional street cleansing response. A significant number, however, are now collected within 2 days, and the majority certainly within the 5 days. And just an example of that, in 16A and B, you'll note that 58% of small fly tips reported in October 2019 took us 5 days plus to respond, compared to only 8% in October 2020, and 65% of large fly tips reported to us in October 19 took 5 days plus to respond, compared to only 7% in October 2020. And again, that's purely down to that additional resource which deals with nothing else other than battalions and fly tips. I think that's basically it, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So I will open to questions. I have Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Brian, for the report. In our work programme, the report was due to report on backlanes, fly tips and dog fouling, although I don't see much in the report on dog fouling. It appears to be silent on the matter, and I just wonder if we can just explore issues around dog fouling. Just for a bit of background, resident contacted us recently about significant dog fouling in a cut between Salters Lane South and Elm Walk. We put a post up on Horton Matters, and not surprisingly, we had a lot of councillors around the town, I'm sure will be familiar with this, a significant number of people came back and said, well, actually, we're experiencing exactly the same thing. I had a look at the portfolio holder's last report to council, where he was talking about an interactive bin map, which is underway, and also the We Are Watching You campaign. I wonder if Brian, which is helpful to know, I wonder if Brian could just sort of give the overarching approach of the local authority currently to dog fouling. What's the sort of prosecutions? I know enforcement's difficult with dog fouling, but how many prosecutions were undertaken last year? Are we measuring the number of complaints that we receive regarding dog fouling? How are we responding to those complaints, and do we have a toolkit that we turn to for things like signage, the things you put on the ground, you know, the spray on the ground. I just wondered if you could just flesh that out. It might be helpful for all members actually to have a note on this matter, Chair, because I'm certainly at the moment not clear about how we're approaching these matters, and it would be useful to hear what Brian has to say. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be good. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Chair. Yeah, in terms of dog fouling, we can certainly, in terms of the prosecutions council, I'll get back to you. The civic enforcement team do that, so I can find all that information out for you, no problem. In terms of what do we do, well, obviously the street cleansing service are around and part it should be, well, we are picking dog fouling up as part of the normal service. In situations like the one you've just described, and I'm aware of that particular, quick you forwarded to myself, we obviously respond straight away and get that sorted as soon as we're aware of that. We do have, I think it's about 800, I think, litter bin stroke dog bins throughout the borough. That map you refer to is actually being worked on as we speak, and that map will be interactive and it'll go on the council's website for all residents to be aware of. And again, there is a campaign, we are watching you, in relation to fly tipping, but it's also going to be in relation to dog fouling as well, and that should be commencing soon. So dog fouling is a problem. It is one that we're dealing with, one we're aware with, and between the communications programme that's coming out and the work that Jill and her team do, and the strategic planning of where we put dog waste and litter bins, what we're trying to do now as well is try to sort of make them dual as well. So, you know, historically it was always a dog waste and a litter bin. We're now doing dual ones. So, because you've always been able to put dog waste in litter bins, that's never been a problem. I think people have always thought that you could, you know, a lot of people thought you couldn't do that. So they weren't, you know, using the litter bins, if you like, to their full capacity. So that might have been the issue. So a lot of the litter bins now have got stickers on to say the dual for dog fouling and litter. So we're trying to, all different sort of aspects coming together to try and deal with the problem of dog fouling. But yeah, we're aware of it and we're definitely working on it. Yeah.
May I just follow up on that, Chair? That's really helpful. I just wonder as well, Brian, whether there's more that we could be doing on signage in terms of, you know, warning people of the consequences of their actions if they do allow their dog to foul and not pick up. I'm also conscious that at the time when austerity was at its height, we were decommissioning some bins. You mentioned the 800 that we have at the moment. There are always demands for more dog bins, you know, and it's usually helpfully from dog owners themselves who come to us and say, well, actually, it'd be really helpful if there was one on this playing field or on this lane. You know, there's a problem here. Are we looking to, what's the sort of approach to dog bins and, you know, dual use bins indeed themselves? Are we happy to increase that? Are there budget issues there, or is that something that members can say, well, look, actually, it is worth going to residents about this because the local authority would welcome this kind of feedback? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, if I just answer that, you're absolutely right. There is a resource impact on that if we start putting out extra additional litter bins and dog bins, because obviously they've got to be serviced. And at the moment, we struggle. Well, we can manage, but just all the litter bins and dog bins that are out there. So yes, we could put more out, but that would again have an impact on service delivery, because it would impact on our ability to empty them. What we did a little while ago, we looked at where there were, and if we had 3 in the area, could we reduce that to 2 by replacing them in the more strategic positions? Again, where there used to be 2 bins present in an area, 1 dog bin, 1 litter bin, we've made them dual bins for people so they can use them for both, and that just helps us. If we do 2 bins down to 1, that allows us to do that one twice as opposed to going 2 bins once, if that makes sense. So there's undoubtedly a knock-on effect by placing more bins out, because obviously you've got to empty them, and at the moment that service is saturated somewhat.
Okay, thank you. Ian, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, if I can, Chair, in terms of dog and dog ownership, as part of the work that's going on at the moment, Anna Wiley is responsible and leads a group of sort of responsible dog owners, which is a number of obviously dog owners and some of the companies who do dog walking out there. And there's lots of positive work going on currently in that group. I think sure yesterday in a number of locations. They were actually just putting up dog poo bag dispensers, which was obviously a request of obviously the group. So there's an awful lot of positive work going on. And dog fouling itself, I mean, as all members will know, is a very difficult offence to catch somebody doing it, and it does never cease to amaze me. I mean, I have a dog and pick up after it all the time. How many people actually? Very rarely have I ever seen anybody not pick up after their dog. And majority of people are responsible and do pick up after the dog. One of the issues with dog fouling a lot of the time is actually stray dogs, rather than obviously dogs which people are in control of. So it is, and it's a very difficult offence, as I say, to catch. Where we do catch people, then obviously appropriate action is taken. So, but rest assured, there's an awful lot of work going on in the background around dogs and responsible dog ownership.
Do we have a stray dog problem in Darlington?
We don't particularly have a stray dog problem. I mean, there are stray dogs, and they're obviously collected and dealt with. I think off the top of my head, we probably deal with on average a year between 500 and 600 stray dogs a year across the service. So it is similar to other areas.
I'm guessing they're dogs that have owners and they've run away, or are they actual wild dogs living in the bushes?
Most of the time they are successfully returned to their owners.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Right, so I have Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the cameras, you mentioned 6/3 covert. I wonder, have you asked your officers whether these, what to me for a town the size of Darlington seems very, very small, have your officers or have you asked your officers how many they actually need in given areas, preferably mobile ones so they can be taken down and moved, etc. And if so, what are we looking at? Do you know offhand, for argument's sake, what the cost of each of these cameras is? I presume covert are going to be slightly different to overt. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, if you don't I'd come in on that one. Yeah, in terms of obviously cameras, that as you're aware, there is a significant camera network across the borough, whether that's fixed cameras on in fixed locations, whether that's the buildings or on poles. A lot of those fixed cameras have grown up over the years and been put in places where there have been problems. And we do, as the report says, have sort of 6 mobile overt cameras that really are moved around based on intelligence and the need for them to be in a particular area to either provide evidence of a perpetrator of an action, or in a lot of cases what it actually does, it provides reassurance to the community and actually stops the problem happening because there is a camera there. With regard to CCTV in its broadest context, obviously working closely with Councillor Dalston, the team are actually going to start to do a review of CCTV and what's the most appropriate going forward, because technology changes all the time. In terms of costs and the overt cameras are currently around about £6,000, the ones that we have, and covert cameras are an awful lot cheaper, anywhere from a couple of hundred up to 1,000 or so, depending on the type of camera that you wish to purchase.
Okay. Good. Okay, Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. I think first of all, it's really, if I go to paragraph 16, the statistics there are absolutely mind-blowing in terms of the improvement. Could I just have an explanation in terms of the resource which has been applied in that area?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. Basically, what we did is what the report said. We took on in June last year an additional resource, which was just a vehicle driver and a second man. Their role is to react to only problems in back lanes and reports of fly tips. So if we get a report of fly tip in the morning, it'll be gone in the afternoon. If it comes in the afternoon, at the very latest, it'll be the following morning. And it's that team being allowed to just focus totally on those issues and nothing else that allows the response to fly tips to be so quick now.
Okay, so in terms of the annual cost there, what we're talking about £100,000 or something like that, or is it a lot less than that?
No, it's a lot less.
Yeah.
It's a lot less. Well, again.
Sorry, Chair, cost of, sorry, Brian, the cost of something like that, if it was permanent employees, is about 50,000 a year for 2 men and a vehicle.
But it is important to note that that's only funded until the end of June next year. So we'll have to say, obviously, we'll have to think about the sustainability of it thereafter.
Okay, but £50,000 is not significant in terms of the wider MTFP. Yeah. We're talking about cameras, and you were talking about costs, etc., and £6,000 for was 6,000 for fixed and a lot less for covert, was it? Sorry, I just picked that up when I was there.
Yeah. Overt, the ones that basically overt ones that you'll see, the dome type cameras that you'll see fixed on lampposts and other locations, they're overt because obviously you can see them, so you don't need to sign that they are there. Covert ones obviously are ones that are hidden, but we tend to sign saying that where we do sign to say that there are cameras operating in this area, so that obviously people are aware cameras are operating in the area. However, you'd be surprised how many people ignore them.
So I just need to go back to something that was in the MTFP, and you may be able to provide me some context. Apologies. Sorry, that just prompted a question. I just need to go back to the report on the futures.
Should we come back to you? Or you?
No, it's fine. In the MTFP, the Futures Fund, it says that 65,000 was for the purchase of a mobile CCTV camera and deployment over the years. So I'm assuming when it says mobile, that is something which is attached to a vehicle.
So the mobile cameras are the ones that we can move around from lamppost to lamppost and to other locations.
Right. Okay. So there's 3 separate types of camera then. Just so I'm just trying to understand it.
Technically they're all mobile, councillor, or the dome ones that can be fitted on lampposts. They've got a problem area, then they can take them off that lamppost and move it to another. And the same with the covert as well. We move them from one to the other. So all the cameras that we have are technically mobile.
Okay. Thank you. Just finally, going back to obviously dog fouling, which it's been mentioned as ward councillors. It's one of the things that always comes up, and I know during COVID there was the issue with dog bins being closed, and that was rectified through signage. I think it's a really positive now that we are improving the signage on bins, which historically hasn't been there. Going back to, I think Councillor Wallace was talking about capacity. I'm assuming that what we do at this moment in time is we respond to hotspots, because you can't have a bin for every, sited for every eventuality. If we do need additional capacity in terms of bins.
I mean, yeah, we've got a good network of litter and dog bins all around the borough, and in over the years, they've probably cover the very vast majority of areas that need them. However, if for whatever reason it becomes evident that there's a problem in a particular area where dog fouling, it might be a new walk, it might be a new field open, I don't know, if it becomes a reason for us to put a bin in, then absolutely we'll put a bin in. We'll have to. We don't have a choice. We can't just ignore it. So yes, we'll absolutely do that, and then we'll have to sort of worry about collecting it and servicing it later, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, if there's an area comes to our attention that's in need of a bin put in, then absolutely we'll put it in. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tate, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to thank the team that deal with fly tipping, because it is an endless task. especially what we see on social media anyway. In regards to cameras, I want to pick up on that one actually. Obviously, Firth Moor and Eastbourne has quite a significant amount of CCTV cameras in situ. However, the quality of them now is so poor that upon reporting fly tipping, the camera quality couldn't even pick up the registration number off a van from underneath it. So pretty much pointless. So I do welcome the review of the CCTV in general. However, one area that we've actually managed to get one of the mobile cameras, and it's one of the dome ones that's on a lamppost, and it's been there for several months now. It hasn't stopped the fly tipping, and when I report it, it's as if it's such a laborious task. They try to pinpoint myself to say, okay, councillor, can you tell me when it was specifically dropped off? I can't give you the hour it was dropped off. And the reason they want that information, it's because they have to trawl back through the footage to try and obtain any piece of footage to pinpoint it. And I've stopped actually requesting it because it's just easier to report it and then just have it picked up and dealt with. Or sometimes the people fly tipping it are a bit more cleverer than our cameras are, and they're just off site or out of view for it. So I don't think they're necessarily great on all scenarios. Thank you.
Hey, Chair, if I can, I think in terms of cameras, they're not the be all and the end all, and they don't stop everything. They are part of and one of the tools in the armoury in terms of being able to address the issues of fly tipping and broader environmental crime. Specifically with regard to the mobile cameras, they're not lifetime recording, where obviously the fixed ones are lifetime recording. You can see, obviously, you can see within the control room back at the town hall. You can go into any camera and you can see what's going on. The mobile ones are collecting the data, and that's why you're being asked for the. If you have an approximate idea, well, it was probably around between 2 and 4 o'clock or whatever it happens to be. Then obviously, as you say, you can go through and you can look at that data because it collects the data and stores the data as opposed to being sort of lifetime. Sent back to the control room, and that's one of the things that obviously as part of the review and everything we do, and we're looking at how obviously we can improve that. You can obviously work with the technology that you've currently got and that's currently available, but that will be one of the opportunities going forward to see exactly what technology is out there and how we can continue to develop our system moving forward. That's more appropriate, because as you rightly say, a lot of the fixed cameras were put in locations historically that were right at the time but probably aren't right now. And there are better ways of doing things, and that's where we need to move towards over a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ian. Just in regards to as councillors, I am out and about and I do usually pick things up like that, but even some residents can't give me a 2-hour window slot where they think that the fly tip was done. The best I get is it wasn't there Thursday, but it was there Sunday. Yeah. And sometimes that's the best. And ultimately, if the camera's there and we're using that resource, it's like, is somebody literally going to sit and try and grab that from that 3-day window, or is it literally just we wouldn't do that? I don't know.
It depends on the severity of the issue that we're dealing with, and
right.
What, we do try and obviously get that evidence, and where that evidence exists, we will take action against that. But it's like all these things; they are limited in their ability, and they're just part of the overall package.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Allen.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Just picking up on what Councillor Tate just said. Wildlife cameramen don't seem to have any problems with motion sensor cameras. That is how they get most of their footage in inaccessible areas. Have we costed whether motion sensor cameras are viable financially? And if so, I honestly think we need lots and lots more until the fly tippers get the message. We do have cameras, we will employ them, and they will be caught and they will be fined, etc. Perhaps we could work with other agencies and other councils and just keep blitzing certain areas all over the place. Maybe we just need a bit more collaboration with other people if we don't. Obviously, you know, I'm very aware of, we have a budget. It's as simple as that. And if you don't have the money coming in, you can't spend the money going out. It's as simple as that. I've lived with that all my life. So I'm not trying to be unreasonable or unrealistic. It's merely a fact of, is there any way we can perhaps share with resources or do something slightly different? Thank you.
Yeah, I think sorry, Chair, as part of the review, we will pick up whatever the technology is out there and what's appropriate. And we do work with colleagues across Tees Valley and County Durham and share intelligence, because obviously fly tippers don't just necessarily operate within geographical boundaries. So, you know, we do work closely with the neighbouring authorities.
Okay. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Wallace actually was before me.
No,
oh,
I keep an eye. I'll try.
Apologies, Chair. It's obviously we're talking. You know, the headline here is back lanes, and I know that not only issues in back lanes but also fly tips. A lot is reported through Fix My Street. And I was just wondering, do we have an idea as the percentage of issues that are reported through that route?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the apps that people have on their phones, Fix My Street and stuff like that, we actually get very few through.
Right. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Were you saying something else there, Brian? You look like you said something, but you were.
No, sorry, no, the world of me one, sorry.
Okay, is that something that we as a council actively market, that app, or?
We don't actively market, we're aware of them and we do answer to them. Some of them actually are very difficult to get the information out of. It's not as straightforward as one would hope. And as I say, we only get very small numbers on them anyway, but when we do get it through, we act quite, you know, as quick as we would any other report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wallace?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to the point that we were discussing on the number of bins that we have, and of course we've discussed the MTFP today. I wonder through whether you would feel this is appropriate. I mean, there's no fixed budgets. Yes, it might be expensive to increase the number of bins exponentially, but there could be a small increase of bins. And I just wondered whether we could ask officers to price up what the cost would be to the revenue budget of increasing bins, the number of bins in the town by, say, 10%, and to have a look ourselves at whether that would be something as a priority that we would welcome or not, and we would still have time to make representations to Cabinet in time for the MTFP when it's considered next year. It's just something that, as I think we all know, it just comes back again and again in terms of our inboxes, and it might be helpful for Scrutiny to have that figure so we could decide whether we wanted to make that recommendation to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Does anyone want to respond to that, or is that just a...
Well, can I suggest that officers do come back with that figure? They can do it so in writing, obviously not today, Chair, and maybe we could consider that at our next meeting under any other business or questions, or we're all minutes from the last meeting. That would be the place, I guess, to do it, and take matters from there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I associate myself with the comments from Councillor Durham? The statistics presented in paragraph 16 are fantastic to see. Obviously not down to zero, so there's still room to improve, but it's a marked improvement on where it was last year. Certainly, I know Mr. Graham has spoken to the increased response with a dedicated back lane team. I think as a committee, I'm sure we would all agree we'd like to see this continued high level of response. But given it was referenced in paragraph 5, and I know it was spoken to in the report, the current level of staffing is around 80% of that in 2016. Given the continued challenge and the proposed expansion of the town and increased housing and increased demand on these services. I'm just concerned about how this is continued to be resourced beyond the end of the MTFP and certainly beyond the end of the Futures Fund. Another question, if I may, I wonder what officers' opinion was on backlane gates. So as an urban councillor, I have a lot of backlanes, and it's quite apparent that some are better kept than others. But in terms of reducing fly tipping within particular areas, it's something that I know other local authorities do use to some effect, and I know that I have spoken to residents about it in the past. So I wondered what their opinion was. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ian, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, if I can ask Councillor Dalston, because I know Councillor Dalston has an interest in alley gating.
Just to give some context about alley gates, I think it's important that, you know, we've heard a lot of science between other local authorities who've trialled them. So if we look at our neighbours in Middlesbrough, for example, I know Andy Preston, the mayor, is constantly talking about them not solving the problem. I think what we do need to do as a council, though, and one of the things I've tasked the officers with, is trialling them, because we can stand here and say to residents they don't work and they're not as effective as people may think. However, sometimes you have to trial something for people to know that actually it's not the resolution to the problems that you're facing. So I am keen to explore it so we can give residents the reassurance that we are taking their feedback seriously. But I'll be honest, from the offset, I'm not as optimistic as, you know, people may be with regard to the success of these, because I have seen the other side and it's not particularly effective.
Yeah, Chairman, and I think if I can, I think as Councillor Dalston says, obviously that's something the team are looking at now to find the most appropriate location to look at doing a trial of alligators. However, one of the issues we have in terms of finding those areas, a lot of the rubbish in back lanes is put there by the residents or the tenants of those houses. So therefore, actually, it doesn't solve the problem of somebody coming into a back lane and fly tipping, because obviously the alley gates in effect are there to stop people actually entering those areas. However, as Councillor Dalston says, we need to trial this to evidence it, because actually it might, if you do that, it might actually create a level of ownership in that particular area, might improve the area anyway. So it is something we are looking at request of Councillor Dalston at the moment. So we'll probably, as we move into 2021, we'll be looking at an area, and they now have to be put in through a public space protection order. So there's a process that we would need to go through as well.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Councillor Keir, did you want to come in on that one, or was it in something else?
It wasn't that specific. It was just in general, Chair, regarding where we're going. You know, the I suppose with the back lanes, it's more driving more to the prevention side. The extra crew that are on just now are there to try and get that feeling of the lanes are clean and we're going to keep them clean. But the effort that we should be focusing on going forward is around the prevention side and changing the behavioural side. And it's about, you know, trying to give people that sense of, you know, keeping the place clean. So over the next 6 months, that's where the efforts are going to be. The additional crews out to June. And I think one of the things that will allow us to sustain this, I think, and it's something that Ian's and Brian have talked about already, is the cameras. Now, they may not be the be-all and end-all, but with modern technology nowadays, we're getting more and more effective with the use of those things. So it's something we're looking at in general in that overall review of the CCTV. So sustaining the level we're at is going to be difficult enough, but I think the key to it is getting to the prevention side, and that's where the cameras, the benefits, showing the benefits to folks, and also through Jonathan's enforcement team, is to start to show that, you know, we will do use the eyes and ears to start looking at people who are continuously doing this, and if we do find evidence that people are you know, profligating and doing this type of thing, then they will go through that measured process, and eventually they'll go to court. So it's there. I think for me, the the work that's been done just now is fantastic, but I think we need to change. The behavioural part's going to take longer, and that's about the prevention side. On the gates themselves, early gates, I'm not convinced. I think it moves it from one place to another. If it's a sort of transient dump, somebody in a car or something, I think it just moves it to the next place unless you gate everything. So I'm not convinced, and I think the evidence from other places that we've seen suggests that's the case. So yep, I think it's moving for that, having to pick up, keep it as clean as possible, get people to get a pride in the place, and then we go more with the prevention side. Now, that's where our efforts are going to be over the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tate.
Hello, thank you, Chair. It's just a question around bins, and I can't remember if it was Brian that responded to my query. And it's in regards to allocations of bins in new build areas. So I had a query come in from a resident who moved into one of the lovely new apartment flats off McMullen Road, and it was the second section that was built. So the first section closest to the retail park was done a couple of years ago. We've done phase 2, which is the middle section, and phase 3 is currently started. So this resident said to me, after they'd moved in, we've got no bins. So I sent it into the council, and he's replied with, we won't review any additional bins for that area until the last phase is completed. Have I understood that correctly, Brian?
It shouldn't be like that, councillor. No, I mean, ultimately, when a resident moves in, if they allow, if they notify us that they're in a new build, we as general rule will send the containers out at the earliest opportunity to them.
These aren't like their household waste bins. These are like on-street bins. So like pedestrian bins.
Litter bins.
Yeah, like litter bins. Yeah.
All right. So it's a request for a litter bin in the area.
Yeah, and the response I had back was that we wouldn't do it until phase 3 was completed, because then it would be reviewed all in one. And if that's the case, though, like the first build section in phase 1, that's been up for a couple of years now.
Again, like I said earlier, if there's a need for a litter bin or a dog bin in an area, well, and the evidence is there to say yes, we need one, then we'll have to put one in. I'm not aware ever of seeing it's in 3 phases, and at the end of it, we'll determine whether you can have a litter bin or not. No, it's as far as I'm concerned, irrespective of whether it's a new build, an existing build, wherever, if it comes to our attention that there is the necessity to put a bin in, then we will do so.
Thanks, Brian. I'll drop you an email with the one I had previously.
Please, yeah, I'm interested, yeah.
So is the issue on that one that the first 2 phases haven't been adopted by the council yet, the paths and the roads, is that?
I think that sounds similar to the response I was given, yes.
So the response came from Highways about adoption?
It might have been. Sounds similar.
Send me the email. We'll have a look at it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Cousins?
Yeah, 2 or 3 things, please. One, about the enforcement staff. Are we still using people from outside of the borough to augment our enforcement staff and clearing up teams? And I think we're using people from Stockton to help with our efforts. The other thing is, having learned the lessons up to now from the Back Lanes project, will we be rolling it out across the borough, and when to other areas? And the third thing is about private landlords and letting agents, because it appears that some of these people who move in, new tenants, move in, tidy the house up, dump the litter a few doors down the street. Can we make sure that private landlords and letting agents ensure that their tenants are well informed as to not do things like that? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah. In relation to the using the parties to help clean and keep tidy the borough, we've never had people from outside the borough actually come in terms of cleanliness or help us out. That's all done ourselves. We did have about a year, 18 months ago, time flies, it might be longer. A private company undertaking enforcement of litter predominantly in the town centre. Is that not what you're thinking of, councillor? Right. I'm not aware of, I mean, we do have volunteers help us out with the cleansing of the borough, but I'm not aware of anybody coming in from outside to help us clean.
You're on mute, councillor.
I think it was more the enforcement side of it. Apparently they were augmented by, just recently, by people from Stockton.
No, if I can, Brian, I think in terms of civic enforcement, there's not additional staff from Stockton Borough Council involved in the service. We currently have some SIA qualified staff from a private security company supporting the civic enforcement team in the town centre, in particular with regard to COVID ambassadors. So that's the only resource we have in at the moment in terms of, which is coming through government funding, some additional funding from government in terms of COVID marshals, COVID ambassadors. So we have additional staff in the town centre doing that, but certainly not from Stockton, no.
All right, it's just that I'd heard you had some other people. That must be what it was about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in terms of your councillor, the question around landlords, as part of the Back Lanes project, some of the work that Anna and the team are doing is obviously taking action against landlords. And I think last week they had one in under Pearce interviewing in terms of obviously their behaviour and what they were allowing to happen. So we are engaging with landlords that aren't behaving in the appropriate way with their tenants as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Dalston, do you still have your hand up, or do you have a question? Okay. Right. Councillor Ali had a question before she left, and I emailed her to see if she wanted me to ask it for her. So she has sent me a response, so I will read it verbatim if I can. So I recently raised a concern regarding a waste overhaul private resident Eastmont Road. I was told the resident would be served a notice and so on, but the picture you can clearly see it's a massive problem. Bringing rodents and highlighting the person will be vulnerable, so most likely need support from services. Can we as a council in severe circumstances remove the rubbish to resolve environmental issues and then follow serving notices? If you
go on ahead.
Sorry, I mean, again, without knowing the specific incident, I don't know whether you do, Brian. I mean, it depends on the specific incident and in terms of the appropriate action that we can take through the powers that we have.
It was within the curtilage of the premises, so it falls within environmental health, and I know Carol Whalen's team are involved in this.
Okay. So I just suggest that Councillor Ali gets back in contact to.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Okay. And I have a question. Is it possible? We talk about a reduction in funding levels. Is it possible to see the funding levels for possibly the past 15 years for street scene, and then I'd be interested to see the number of fly tips within the last 15 years, and to see if there's a positive correlation in terms of the cleanup and fly tips actually occurring, or whether it's because obviously cleanup isn't necessarily prevention, but is that possible to have that data?
I think 15 years will be an extreme challenge in terms of expenditure data and also fly tipping data, and because obviously over the years things will have changed differently. We can look at Brian and team will have a look at obviously what sort of time frame makes sense that we can interpret fairly and understand. So we can certainly look at that, yeah. But 15 years I think will be a bit of a challenge.
Okay, well, as far as you can go.
It's about comparing apples with apples, isn't it? If you look at this year, even though the report says the fly tips are down slightly this year, that's sort of counteracted by the fact that through lockdown there's so much waste being put out. Yeah. So if lockdown hadn't appeared, for example, the number of fly tips would have probably gone down even more, because obviously everybody's aware during lockdown everybody's in the house, everyone's producing more waste was getting placed out for collection, getting reported as fly tips. So it's about comparing apples with apples, but I will have a look and we'll definitely pull out what we can for you. Yeah.
Even if it's just pre-2016, maybe from 2014 onwards, just to get an understanding of how that reduction has affected actual incidents, if it has at all. Okay. Check Councillor Dalston again. You've still got your hand up. If there's nothing, no more hands. Okay, so other than Councillor Wallace's request for officers to come back on the cost of an increasing bins by 10%, I'd like to suggest that we note the report and thank officers for their work. Do I have a seconder? Yep, and a quick show of hands. Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much, both. Thank you, Brian. And I think Ian, you're still with us for a little bit. So moving on to agenda item number 7, which is the performance indicators. And Ian, if you'd like to come in again.
Yeah, can do, Chair. I mean, obviously, members have got the report there, so I'll not talk through that report. The key thing to say in this is, in terms of performance information, it's obviously across the board significantly impacted in most areas as a result of obviously the current situation we're in, whether that's through lockdown, reduced resources, or buildings actually not being open, so therefore there's nothing to compare. So really, I think I just go back to members if there's any questions that they have from any of the information there, then I'm happy to take that, and if I can answer, I will do.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Any hands? Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regards the metrics around the library, obviously the library is now offering digital services. I wondered if there were any metrics that could be presented instead of physical visits, which obviously will be down this quarter due to lockdowns. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I think obviously historically these are the performance indicators that members had asked to come forward, and in terms of the library, as you rightly say, the service is changing, and the current situation has driven those changes further. So I know the team are looking at different metrics in terms of what's more appropriate to look at, because the world of libraries is changing and changing fast.
Okay, is that okay, Councillor?
Yes, Chair, it might just be prudent to at some point discuss how that can be incorporated into these reports.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's obviously just a comment and then a question. Indicator ENV002. That's obviously seen a positive increase in the number of street champions, and I know that when I've been out and about, see more people picking litter, which has obviously been potentially been an impact of COVID. People have more time, people are wanting to utilise that time, keep themselves busy, and long may that continue. Just moving on to ENV ENV021 and ENV022. Now we've obviously got the percentages there, and we've got a total amount which is showing ENV006. I just wondered, could ENV006 be split so it could report both large and small fly tips?
Yes. Sorry, I was just hesitating there. Yes is the answer to that, because that data is collected in terms of through the system, Brian. Yeah,
fly capture identifies the different size fly tips that we have, so we should be able to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to add a bit of detail in regards to Councillor Collins' question about the library. When it had its birthday celebrations, the new manager of the library, and forgive me, I forgot her name, is it Lindsay?
Susie,
sorry, my apologies. She gave a great presentation, and her detail did include them figures about digital world, so it is available. It was just to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other hands? No, I have a quick question, and apologies for being a bit morbid. But I was interested to know why we group people killed with seriously injured, as they're obviously quite different.
In terms of obviously the road traffic incidents, obviously we don't have a highway colleague on me, and these are national indicators that obviously we need to respond and report to on a national basis. So they'll be set that those are things that we've got to report to regardless.
Okay, no problem. If we have no other hands, I'd like to propose we note the report and thank officers for the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wallace, and quick show of hands. Great stuff. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the work programme. And Hannah's going to say a few things on that, and I also have a few additions. So Hannah, if you'd like to.
So members are just asked to consider the work programme. There is, as you will see, Appendix 2, a request from Councillor Mrs Colley to undertake a piece of work in respect of the School Street initiative. So it's just for members to decide whether you want to include that on the work programme or not.
Councillor Mrs Colley, would you like to say anything on that?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. Chair, the School Streets Initiative, we were made aware of that, and those of us with schools in our wards, I think it's important that as a scrutiny committee we input into the whatever we find in a task and finish, that it's put into the final report that goes to Cabinet in the new year. The School Streets Initiative is about sorting out ways to try and mitigate traffic around schools, making it safer. Mowden itself has a bubble around the school as one of the first schools to try this, and it's just to see what councillors can input into the report, because you will all have different experiences of the schools within your wards, and a task and finish, so it'll be probably one online meeting just to get our views, to make sure that we have a voice on this in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colley. Do you have any comments on that?
Sorry, could I just also say, can I suggest the 16th of December for the date of it? Because we were already doing loneliness on the 15th on a different scrutiny, and I think we should try and get this in before Christmas. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support the inclusion of this item into the work programme. I think it'd be an excellent task and finish. Yes, certainly, particularly because of COVID, I know schools, potentially not in my ward, but around, have taken additional measures in order to improve kind of safety accessing schools. And in terms of parking in wider streets, it's probably quite useful to get different wards' input into it. So yes, I would really like to see this go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no other comments, just a quick show of hands for anyone who is against the idea of against, if anyone. No, okay. So I propose that we add that to the work programme. Seconder. Okay, and quick show of hands. Okay, so we'll aim for the date of the 16th, and if you want to contact Hannah, she'll put out an email with details, and if you want to just let her know if you want to get involved in that task and finish or not, we'll move from there. Is that okay, Hannah? Okay. Was there anything else from you, Hannah, on the work programme?
No, there was only one item that hasn't been allocated a date, which is CCTV. Everything else has got a date.
Okay, I think we're waiting to see how the review progresses first, and then we'll set a date for that one. Okay, I So in terms of the Rail 200 task and finish, I've received some information from Ian Thompson on the head of steam. So we're talking financials and footfall, which I'm going to share with councillors as the first step on that review. So once I've sent it out, just have a good look, and we'll arrange a discussion possibly in the new year. A lot is happening between now and Christmas, but I'll just keep you updated with that one. I spoke with Dave Glendenning, who is the divisional manager, and he's in charge at Darlington Fire Station. And I had a good talk with him and suggested that he comes and does a possible informal presentation to the committee on the work that they're doing. And well, they're doing a lot of stuff, interesting stuff. I thought it'd be quite good for this committee to hear some of that. So I'll get Hannah to arrange something, and if you want to attend, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I think that's good. We can move on from the report. Do I have to have a vote on that, or I've already voted on the only addition? So I think we can move on to supplementary items, of which there are none. So do we have any additional questions? No? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great Christmas if I don't see you before, or I might see you on the 16th, up to you. Otherwise, great. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.